Hey, peace, 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 and power elevation. Peace and power elevation be to all you beautiful people out there. This your girl Tiffany come through here live in effect. Today topic will be about Robert Yummy Sandifer. So Robert Yummy Sandifer was from Chicago, Illinois. His story is I don't think a lot of people know about who Yummy was unless you was around the time in the 90s. Because during the 90s, his story became very popular. He was an 11-year-old kid, an innocent child that grew up in the rough part of West Side Chicago, I believe, or I think he was from the South Side Chicago. But I'm gonna get into the information about it. But anyways, he was in this gang called the Black Disciples. And while he was in the Disciples, during that time, there was the ongoing gun violence, etc. But there was a young lady named Siobhan. She was 14 years old, and she happened to be outside one night. And according to the news, he allegedly, and I'm just going to say allegedly, because some people still don't believe that he was the one that shot the young lady, but he allegedly shot this little girl. And when it got back to the members of the BD, and they were young, by the way, they were like 14, 16 years old. When they found out he the one that did it and found out what he was doing, how he was butt wilding, they allegedly took him to a bridge and they executed him. They killed him. So this is where the conversation becomes about youth, gang, and generational poverty. All right. So Yami's story really had me sitting back thinking really hard. It had me thinking about my childhood and how things was growing up. And like I said, this was during the time of the 90s when gang violence was at an all-time high. War on drug was a major thing going on. So, but it's really sad how his story started and how his story ended. Because he didn't really come from a very, very loving home. Imagine being 22 months and being raised by your 3 and 5-year-old siblings. And then DFACS, which is Department of Family and Children Services, has to come and remove you and your siblings from the home and place you guys in the foster care system. However, he ended up staying with his grandmother, but he couldn't stay with his grandma for very long because she had too many grandchildren in the house, about 16 or 17 of them. So they had to take him, put him in the foster care. He ran away, and he ended up on the streets. And he ran into the Disciples. Again, he was only 11 years old, and he was no more than 4 feet 6 foot tall. About 4 to 6 foot tall. He was very short. Now, at that tender age, at 11, you really don't have enough experience about life. Or you don't know enough about life. You trying to adjust. You trying to be a child. You trying to look for somebody who can see, who you can reach out to, who give you some form of compassion, who understands you, who loves you. And somebody put up here, I never really saw the sensationalism around Yummy. There were thousands of Yummies back in the 80s and 90s nationwide. Facts, that is true. But I think the main purpose of Yummy's story was to bring light to the situation about the gang violence that was going on in those areas, in places like Chicago and Detroit and LA, etc. So I think it was to bring exposure to what was really going on behind the scene. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and get into this subject. I try to find as much information that I could about Yummy's story, but his story is very it's very tragic. But before I get to that, not only was he in the foster care, but also, according to the interview that I watched and other sources, his mother allegedly put cigarette burns on his body. There were cigarette burns found on his body, on his arm and his chest area. And his mother was addicted to drugs at that time period. So again, he grew up in a very abusive family, abusive household. And his father was nowhere to be found. Now, that's a story for a lot of kids growing up in the hood. You got your mama. Either your mama is working, either your mama is out there in the streets, or either your mama is doing other things in the house with other people. And daddy, either he's locked up, either he's dead, either he's in the streets, or he doesn't want to have anything to do with you, or he's on drugs. So these are the very common stories. This is the ongoing pathology. This is the ongoing pathology that we constantly see. So there's many yummies out there today. There's many yummies out there throwing their lives away each and every day. There's yummies that's trying to get involved in a gang or any type of crime organization just so they can feel protected, just so they can have a family. They feel they trying to be protected from being bullied. Just like the little boy in Texas, when he went in there and shot up the school, he did that because he was picked on by other kids who happened to be in the gang. But let me go ahead and get into the story about Yummy. Okay. Robert Sandifer. This is him. Little precious little boy, little innocent little boy. Okay, he was born March 12, 1983, and he died on September 1st, 1994. He was an 11-year-old American boy from Chicago, Illinois. Sandifer, murdered by fellow gang members in Chicago, garnered national attention because of his age, resulting in his appearance on the cover of Time magazine in September 1994. Nicknamed Yummy because of his love of cookie. Standing 137 centimeters, 4 feet 6 inches, Sandifer was a young member of the street gang, the Black Disciple. After committing murder, arson, armed robbery, he was murdered by his own fellow gang members who feared he could become an informant and that he was attracting too much attention towards their activities. Coverage of Sandifer's death and retrospectives on his short, violent life were widely published in American media. Sandifer became a symbol of the gang problem in American inner cities, the failure of social safety nets, and the shortcomings of juvenile justice system. So here's his biography. Again, he was born in Chicago. His mother is Lorena Sandifer, and she had over 30 arrests while prostituting, many of which were drug related. Sandifer's father, Robert Atkins, was absent throughout Sandifer's life due to incarceration for a felony gun charge. Sandifer was physically abused from the time he was an infant. He was physically abused from the time he was an infant. Now, abusive situation, childhood trauma, is what led this boy to a life of crime. Before he was 3 years old, Sandifer was already known to the Department of Children and Family Services. Physical examination showed that Sandifer was alleged to have had cigarette burns on his arm and neck, as well as linear bruising consistent with physical beatings. Lorena initially blamed the abuse on Sandifer's father, although she later recanted. In 1986, Sandifer and his siblings were removed from his mother's home by defects and were sent to live with their grandmother in the Roseland neighborhood of Chicago. His grandmother's residence contained as many as 19 children on some occasions. By most accounts, his grandmother's home was not much better than Sandifer's previous home. Sandifer, by the age of 8, quit attending school and began to roam the streets, stealing cars and breaking into houses. At the age of 10, Sandifer was arrested on charges of armed robbery. A psychological examiner at the time reported that Robert is a child growing up without any encouragement and support, and that he has a sense of failure that has infiltrated almost every aspect of his inner self. In 1993, Sandifer and his siblings were removed from his grandmother's home and were sent to the Lawrence Hall Defects Shelter on Chicago's north side, from which Sandifer ran away and never returned. From 1993 until his death, Sandifer's whereabouts and living arrangements remain unclear, although he continued to be arrested by the authorities. Murder of Siobhan Dean. On August 28, 1994, Sandifer was ordered to do a favor for his gang. He opened fire several times with a 9mm semi-automatic pistol, striking several youths. Sandifer quickly fled the scene. Among his victims was a 14-year-old girl, Siobhan Dean, who was fatally hit by a stray bullet. And it says, on August 31st, while standing on a neighbor porch, after asking to call his grandmother, in whom he had the greatest trust, Sandifer was met by brothers Craig and Derek Harway, aged 16 and 14, who were both members of the Black Disciple Street Gang. Sandifer was told he was being taken to a safe location and ordered into a waiting car. Instead, he was taken to a railroad underpass at East 108th Street and South Dolphin Avenue and told to get on his knees. While kneeling, Sandifer was shot twice in the back of the head by Harway brothers. Sandifer's body was discovered by the Chicago Police Department in the early morning of September 1st. Around 400 people attended Sandifer's funeral, which was held at the Youth Center Church of God in Christ on Chicago's northwest side. The Hardaway brothers were later convicted on Sandifer's murder. Derek Hardaway, age 14 at the time of Sandifer's murder, received a sentence of 45 years. He was released in September of 2016. So, and there's a book called Yummy, The Last Day of a Southside Shorty, a graphic novel. All right. And then you can also check out the reference at the bottom of the page if you guys want to look more into this. And there's some newspaper article that's related to the story about Yummy. All right, so put this up right here. All right, this come from Chicago Tribune. An 11-year-old on the run for fatally shooting a teenage girl was killed by his own gang in a story that shocked the nation 25 years ago. This came out September the 1st of 2019. Okay. And it says, there was a moment when it appears 11-year-old Robert Yummy Sandifer might escape with his life. Standing just 4'6" and weighing only 68 pounds, he was an unlikely trigger man for the Black Disciple Street Gang and was on the run after killing his 14-year-old neighbor, Siobhan Dean, days earlier. On this hot last night on August in 1994, Yummy spotted a police car rolling through his Roslyn neighborhood and ducked out of sight. He finally ended up at the home of a neighbor and said he wanted to reach his grandmother, one of the few he trusted to be with him when he surrendered to police. A troubling prospect for the leaders of his Black Disciple gang, police theorized. The neighbor left Yummy on her porch for just a moment when a fellow gang member, 14-year-old Derek Holloway, suddenly appeared in a gangway. In an instant, the two boys were gone. Less than an hour, Yummy's lifeless body was found in a viaduct several blocks away. Yummy, a nickname he got for his love of sweets, had been shot twice in the back of the head. I completely lost it, the neighbor said later. All I could think of was I almost saved this kid's life. Yummy Sandifer's story still resonates in Chicago 25 years after his disturbing journey from executioner to executed was splashed on television sets and magazine cover across the country as the latest example of the city's savage gang warfare. All right, it says the boy's story, a home life that bred little but anger, a record of more than 30 arrests before reaching his teen, was a reminder of deep cracks in the system that some argue have never been repaired. There's a lot of Yummy Sanderfires out there, said Patrick Murphy, a longtime Cook County public guardian who represented Yummy before his death and is now a juvenile court judge. Not all of them are murdered after doing a killing at the gang's behest. He might be slightly younger, but there are a lot of young kids out there that the gangs mobilize to do their dirty work for them, and it's still going on. Shootings and homicide are far below what they were back then. In 1994, Chicago saw 930 homicides, up 9% over the previous year, according to the police department. Reported that cited street gang violence and altercation as the most common triggers. In 2018, the city finished the year with 565 homicides. But in the small corner of Roslyn where Siobhan and Yummy were murdered, not much has changed. The area has seen little investment by the city. The home where Yummy once lived has been bulldozed like other vacant homes in the neighborhood. Siobhan's mother, Deborah Dean, said she has lost 3 nephews to gun violence since her daughter was killed. But Dean said she feels some camaraderie in the neighborhood, finding support from old friends and neighbors. The community is what you make it. All right. All right, so let me just go ahead and skip some of this. All right. It says news reports after his death were far less charitable. He was a crooked son of a bitch. Ooh. And as exasperated grocer told Time magazine, always in trouble. He stood out there on the corner and strong arm other kids. No one is sorry to see him gone. That's harsh. But let's go back up here. It says there were quiet moments with the hardened little boy who still softened for sweets and toys. I've seen some good in him, she said, recalling her long ago sympathy for the boy who was often handed off between his mother and grandmother. Some children act like that because they're not getting enough attention. But those moments never last. Even when I took him to church, he would get into a fight, and my mom would always take him to the back and talk to him and stuff like that, give him some sweets, she said. All right. It says, but few, if any, of his neighbors knew of the terrors he faced in his own household. His autopsy offers some clues to his past. His small body bores 49 scars, noted the chief medical examiner in a 1996 Chicago Tribune article. Some likely the result of the normal falls and mishaps of youth, but others just as likely evidence of abuse he suffered at an early age. Born to a mother with drug issues and a mostly absent father, as a toddler, Yami was removed from his mother's home after he was found with multiple bruises, cord marks on his tiny body, and cigarette burns on his neck, shoulder blade, and buttocks. He spent most of his time in his grandmother's care, but was housed in juvenile facilities. As he got into more legal trouble through it all, he maintained a poor self-image, authorities said. He is caught up in a never-ending cycle of emotional overload and acting out, the report continued. His anger is so great that his perception of the world is grossly distorted and inaccurate. Illiterate, lonely, and desperate for attention, authorities said the boy took solace as a shorty, the lowest ranking member of the 8-ball fraction of the Black Disciple, one of the South Side's largest gang. He had BDN3, which stood for Black Disciple Nation, tattooed on his right forearm. He was picked up for auto theft, arson, armed robbery, and a slew of other crimes. And it says Yami's mother, Lorena Sandifer, was one of 14 children with dozens of arrests, while her Mississippi-born mother, Jenny Field, was one of 27 children in her family. Whether they caught or not, they're in this downward spiral where their lives are just effed up from the day they were born, said Murphy, the former public guardian. No one's out there to push them. Is a very sad thing. All right, it says, reach at her South suburban home. Sandifer's grandmother, Janie Fields, declined to speak with a Tribune reporter, and Aunt also declined to comment, but confirmed records showing that Yami's mother died in 2005. Wow, so it's a lot of information here. Let's see, let's go down to here. It says Yami joined the Black Disciple during a particularly contentious war with the Gangster Disciple in a largely residential area that put families in the crosshairs. Violent gang blocks on the far south side past 99th Street got the nickname the Wild Hunteds. Chicago's gang war of 1980s and 1990s were noteworthy for how street gangs, with their complicated hierarchy of members, use young members like Yami for gang business. On August 28, 1994, authorities said leaders tasked the boy with shooting rivals. Police soon found a 16-year-old boy bleeding and writhing in pain near 108th Street and Perry Avenue. An officer leaned down and asked, "Who shot you?" "Yami shot me," the teen said. "I think his name is Robert." So it says before a detective could even retrieve Yami's mugshot, he was notified of another shooting less than a block away. This time there were two teens, 14-year-old Siobhan Dean, who was dead at the scene, and a 17-year-old boy who said Yami had shot them both. By midnight, the FBI had joined a cadre of police officers assigned to find the boy. There were 20 to 30 officers involved, Chicago Police Detective Cornelius Spencer testified. So as you can see, this young man he really didn't get a chance to really live a life as a regular kid. His life was centered around gang violence in the streets. So it's a lot that goes on. It's a lot that goes into this about his life. So this is coming from Chicago Tribune article. But there was some information according to the two young men that was involved in this. All right, so it goes on to say that Catrice Holloway cannot forget the day her family got a call that her younger brothers, Derek and Craig, were being charged with killing Yummy. My parents were together in the dining room, and I just remember them looking at each other and everybody's heart just sinking. She said on the front porch of her family's longtime home in Roslyn, like, oh my God, what's the world is going on? There was a whirlwind of court dates and a scramble to pay legal bills and a scarlet mark left on the seemingly successful family. The boy's mother, Ernestine, was a school teacher and a local school council member. Their father, Craig Sr., was a software engineer. So they grew up in a good family. They grew up in like a little middle class family, sort of. All these years later, it's still hard to understand how her brothers, Craig especially, could fall into the clutches of a ruthless street gang. Her brother Craig, also called CR by family, had a head for numbers and could quickly multiply any random sequence of digits. Both brothers showed promise in school, but also were known gang members willing to use violence. Both of them had both of them have a hell of a temper, a former basketball coach told the Tribune in 1994. Their attitude got in their way of their talent. Catrice Holloway described CR as intelligent but drawn to the street life, while Derek was merely following his brother's footsteps. My question was why Catrice Holloway said you can write your own ticket to any college you want because you're that smart. Why do you have to dumb yourself down for these people out here who don't give a care about you? At the time of Yummy's death, Catrice Holloway was a 21-year-old student at Columbia College studying for a career in television production. Now, 46, she said much has changed. Both her parents have died. Craig's son was born before his conviction. She has also suffered her own health challenges. Still, she said her family has made its way through the turmoil and remained tight. She continued to live in the same two-story frame house she called home for about 30 years and welcomed her youngest brother, Derek, back after his release from prison in 2016. With both parents gone, Catrice Holloway found herself the matriarch of the family, a strange sensation she only recently realized while offering some advice to Derek. Derek Holloway, now 39, declined to be interviewed, saying he hoped to move on with his life. Catrice said her youngest brother, for better and for worse, matured behind prison wall, learning life lessons in the strictest way possible. He's a different person now, of course. He almost 40 as opposed to 14, but he had to grow up behind bars, she said. He's dealing with it as best as he can. Of course, you are going to have some type of scars coming out of that situation, but I can say God has kept him. All right. All right, then. So that's all I have for today about the story of Yummy. That was just a very tragic situation. It was very tragic. on multiple levels, not only on Yummy, but the victim Siobhan and two other victims that was involved, and also the brothers that was involved in his murder. All of this could have been avoided. But again, this is what happened when you give devotion to the lifestyle, to the hardcore of the streets. You going out here, you're trying to prove yourself. You're trying to prove that you're down with the people, that you down with the gang, and that you will do whatever it takes to show your loyalty. So again, I mean, it doesn't stop here, because it's plenty more people that's like Yummy. There's plenty more people that's out here at a very young age, dropping out of school, getting involved in street activity, getting involved in the game, because they feel like that's their only hope. That's their only way to get through that rite of passage and prove their status to their manhood and their womanhood, etc. And also, you got to look at the biggest part of this is generational poverty. Now, although the brothers, the Hardaway brothers, never grew up in poverty because their mother was a school teacher and a councilman, and their father was a software engineer, so they had a pretty decent life. But Yummy did not have a decent life. He grew up in generational poverty. All right. This is all he knew. That's all he was drawn to, because he had no type of solidified foundation. He had no type of guidance. He had nobody show him some type of moral composition. He had nobody to teach him, if you go down this path, this is what you're going to deal with. This is what's going to happen. He didn't have a very strong male figure in his life. His mother was not stable enough to raise him. His grandmother did the best she could. So he was in and out the system and in and out the streets. I mean, this is a story that you hear from a lot of young people. This is a story of a common African-American male or female, for the most part. Now, some of them, if they're fortunate enough, they're able to grow up in a good environment, a very decent environment where they feel more protected and be able to have a better childhood and be able to do things and get involved in extracurricular activities, something that's more productive. But for the common African-American child, this is what it is. You wake up, you walk outside your door, what do you see? Abandoned buildings, boarded up homes, liquor stores on every corner, drug dealers, drug addicts, police riding down your block. This is something that we're used to. We see this as normal, and it's not really a good thing, but that's what we see as normal. We see that, oh, this is the normal way to be, and it's not. So I know you guys out there, y'all done had plenty of friends that was like Yummy, or that was like the Hardaways. But one thing I would say, I enjoy doing history because this brings me to a lot of information that I have not ever known or learned about. So I already knew the story about Yummy, but I wanted to dig a little deeper and be able to share it to others out there, to the listening audience. So I enjoy this because you're able to open up doors to so many things that you have not known. There's so many information that is hidden, but you have to be the ones to actually dig deep in and do the ongoing research, or check out the articles, the books, or whatever it is. I'm fortunate to do that. I'm fortunate to do these things. So I wouldn't regret it. I wouldn't regret the fact that I'm having a YouTube platform and pretty much putting out historical information and stuff like that. I don't regret it at all. I mean, this is something that I'm passionate about. But anyways, again, y'all take it easy. And until next time, may peace and power and elevation be to all of you. This your girl Tiffany. And I will be coming back later on with some more information on various subjects. So just stay tuned and just watch. And also make sure you subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell, share my channel, whatever you gotta do. All right. Thank you.